find the boy?
Caught one of the bikes, but he didn't have the child.
Bring me the prisoner. I'll break his mind. You killed him, didn't you?
He didn't make it.
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody, my name is Kevin.
And I'm John.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. And ladies and gentlemen, do not forget, if you do enjoy the stuff we put out on here, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel today. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Black Adam, directed by John Colette Serra, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Aldous Hodge, and Pierce Brosnan. Nearly 5,000 years after he was bestowed with the almighty power of the Egyptian gods and imprisoned just as quickly, Black Adam is freed from his earthly tomb, ready to unleash his unique form of justice on the modern world.
Dun dun dun.
John, it's funny when we get movies like this where they just simply don't matter anymore, and that's partially our fault. You know, we are reviewing this a little bit late. We are late to the party. But nonetheless, I think we need to take a look at Black Adam because we need to talk about it, unfortunately. Now, John, I want to ask you, before we even really jump into this review, as far as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the people's champion, the pie-eating son of a gun himself, do you think he's a good actor?
I don't know if he's a good actor, but most of the movies that he's been in, I've liked.
Right, and
or at least liked him in it.
And you know what? It's funny because he's always the same character anytime I see him in anything. Ever since, The Rundown, Walking Tall, Fast and the Furious. I mean, he's the same guy, right? He essentially is. We don't very see him stray much. Even when he's in something like Jungle Cruise, he's still Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I even I know he doesn't even like to be called The Rock anymore, but to me, he's always going to be The Rock. As a wrestling fan, pure at heart, that's who he's going to be. Black Adam, though, I will give him this. If this is the first positive we're going to give this movie, we got something a little bit different here. Black Adam is essentially the take on a villain becoming a superhero. And I think Dwayne Johnson really did a good job with this. The material's not that great in this movie. I'll tell you right now, this movie really isn't that good considering how much time it took to get off the ground. But if I'm going to say anything really positive, I thought he did a good job. What did you think as far as his performance?
No, definitely. I thought that if anybody was going to make me like this character through this movie, I thought he was a great pick for it. And I thought just some of the things that he did in this movie made it more bearable to watch. Because He just had that, I don't know what it was, but you could see that it seemed like he was actually trying through this movie.
Yeah, I think Dwayne Johnson is a unique character. I don't think he's the best wrestler turned actor. I think really, honestly, that has to go to Dave Bautista, who's just stolen the show and everything he's been in. Some people could say John Cena, which not really. I don't think he's barely scratched the surface. I think even Roddy Piper's a little better than him if we're going to be really honest about actors in wrestling. But
Hulk Hogan.
Putting that aside, yeah, Hulk Hogan, Mr. Mom there, right? Or whatever it was, Suburban Commando. Oh man, okay, we're gonna go down a rabbit hole if we start talking about that stuff. But if you're gonna do something like this, if you're gonna take a villain character and turn him hero, I think Dwayne Johnson's a good pick for that, and I kind of understand why they went with him. He has so much charisma, even when he's barely talking. A simple glance from this man can set 1,000 ships to sail, right? He really does have that look about him, and he looks intimidating as hell. As someone who grew up reading the Shazam comics and, being enthralled in its lore, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he looks just like Black Adam. And he's known that. He said several times that he was a huge fan of the character, which I kind of contest here and there. I don't know how true that was. But regardless of that, he looks like the character. And he embodies that character. And I kind of understood from a certain perspective why Warner Brothers decided to go this direction with him, because he is a marketable actor, right? He is someone that's going to draw the butts to the seats. Unfortunately, in hindsight, it seems like that didn't happen, and the DC universe is kind of on a downward spiral. But, and you know what? And it's funny because I thought this movie maybe would have been able to fix that. It just doesn't. And I think besides Dwayne Johnson's performance, this movie really falls apart, John. I know me and you, we watched it together. It's been a while since we've actually sat down together and watched a movie, and it was kind of painful to get through at times. I bet you had a hard time too. I could tell for a lot of it.
Well, yeah, it was, and it was also, I thought, I know we're going to get into it more, but as we were talking too, there was at a point where we thought the movie was ending.
Yeah.
And we thought, like, even at that point, I thought, like, if they ended it, I would have been okay with them ending it right there and it's done.
Mm-hmm.
But then it seemed like it dragged on after that, and it was like, there was so much more potential too for this movie,
Right?
that they didn't scratch the surface on that they could have.
And that's the biggest misstep I think in this movie is the potential. There is so much potential for what this could have been, and it just simply isn't there. So let's go into it. Like, I have a couple positives I want to talk about. Again, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson obviously steals the show as Black Adam in this movie. He's also joined by Pierce Brosnan, which was a very fun surprise, and I couldn't tell if he was acting, if he wasn't acting, whatever the case is. He plays Dr. Fate, who is a character I absolutely love, and he did a fantastic job. And him and Dwayne Johnson had a really good chemistry together for their scenes, and some of the more emotional beats I think they were trying to hit definitely worked off each other. It's hard to tell if that was Pierce Brosnan just being Pierce Brosnan as a superb actor, or if they did have that chemistry. I like to think they did, right? I think there was something there. But Dr. Fate was a really cool character, and he was probably the only other engaging character in this movie, which is, something we'll talk about a little bit later. Also, I do think the action scenes, to some degree, were pretty well done. Black Adam in the beginning of this movie, when he's awakened from his tomb, I thought that was a really cool action scene, and something that they don't really go through with the rest of the movie, but it was almost like a horror scene. What would you describe that like, John?
It was like a 300, more like. But it was also weird too, like we were saying with the action scene and everything too. I felt like some of them I really enjoyed.
Right, like the beginning, right? Because I remember us even saying in the beginning, he's picking up a guy and he's like shocking him with electricity and like draining his body, and he's like a horror villain. He's flying around killing all these guys, and you have no idea what's going on. He pinches like a bullet and grabs it and just like looks at it like he's a god, right? And that's the character that we want, but like you're gonna say, yeah.
But that's the same thing. Like that's also another problem too, because you compare that first part of the movie,
right,
and then you compare that to the end, how it is, and it's like almost completely different from what they started with. It was almost like they got all the way through the movie, they're like, well, we don't want this much action, we'll just tone it down for a little bit, we'll give you a little bit less like badass stuff.
Right, and I think that's like, I feel like every positive I'm gonna have with this movie, it's almost gonna be like a sandwich almost of like good, bad, but instead of like the bad on top or the good on top and the good on the bottom, it's the bad on top with the good in the middle. It's always gonna be anything positive I say is gonna be followed up by something negative, unfortunately, with this movie. And it really hurts at times because, for example, the score I thought was fantastic in this movie. A lot of booming and a lot of like doom and like a really good remixing, like heavy. The bass was like thundering for this movie. I thought the Atmos was actually really well done, considering where we were watching it. But then what do? They decide to pull Guardians of the Galaxy and just throw in random. We're laughing. Me and you were cracking up at times for some of the songs. They're like Paint It Black just starts playing out of nowhere. Power by Kanye West blazes at one point. It's comical. Like, they're just doing that, and it has nothing to do with the scene. It's just like, oh, if we put a good song in, this will be a good scene. That's not how it works, and I don't think they understand the difference. And we've seen that before from DC with the Suicide Squad, the first film that came out. Just throwing in a hit song doesn't make a scene good.
Well, that's the thing, too. Like, that's why people who like to collect, like, movies and stuff, we like to watch the behind-the-scenes kind of stuff to try to understand why certain things have they chose and stuff, but some of this stuff just doesn't make sense.
No.
Like, you look at it and you go, why would you throw that in there? Or even you called the song coming in before it even started playing. You're like, I bet you they're gonna play it right here.
Yeah, because I heard it and they did a cool thing, right, with the score. Because in the first, I'm like, oh, that's cool. That sounds like Paint It Black. I can hear it. It's like intertied with the score. And then you play the song, and it's like, oh. You were doing something unique there that I actually really liked, and then you just ruined it. And that's like the MO of this movie completely. It's really frustrating for me at times to watch. Going into more of that, let's go more into the characters, because I think that's where we're going to see some stuff where, like I said, we had Black Adam, who was a good character. We had Dr. Fate. Nobody else in this movie is good at all. And to the point where they're almost terrible at times. Now, why is that, do you think, John? Why do you think this movie doesn't work? If you had to point your finger on something, what do you think it was?
I don't know. I just felt like I had no connection to any of the other characters either.
And that's what I'm going for.
The problem is, not only do you have The Rock and Pierce Brosnan on a different category, but these people were so bad they were almost background actors.
Right.
Like, even the other group of superheroes, per se, the JAS, I think they were called.
JSA, right.
JSA. They were like almost like, I feel like they come from like the Kick-Ass movies. Like they were like some knockoff superheroes from the streets or something.
And it's funny because they're not, and they actually are legit heroes, but they're so random in this movie. It hurts the film.
Yeah, and then like even the main girl, who was supposed to be like this, helping everyone save the world and stuff and help them out. When they showed her fighting at the end, it was almost like comical almost. It was like, wait, is this for real right now?
Yeah, no, and it's just, and the performances make it even worse. So what they're trying to do essentially here is the JSA is showing up because they have to stop Black Adam. That's what that is. You know, Justice Society of America is comprised of Hawkman, Atom Smasher, Cyclone, I believe, and Dr. Fate, obviously, at that point. And they're there to come and stop Black Adam because Black Adam's awakened and they know his history. Amanda Waller actually makes a cameo in this movie, which is cool. That is a side note. They did do a good job connecting this movie to the broader DC universe. Again, I don't really want to spend too much time on it because it doesn't matter. But the big thing is, the JSA is there to like combat Black Adam, but the problem is they're trying to tell two different movies. It really felt like they wanted this to be a JSA movie in a Black Adam movie, but you can't have both. And because you have both and you're trying to make both of these characters compelling, it just doesn't work. Especially when you have Black Adam played by Dwayne Johnson so well done and he's such a standout character. I don't want to see the JSA on my screen. The Justice Society of America does not interest me. And if you can't have Aldous Hodge, who's trying to do his best with the material, I really liked him in The Invisible Man. He had a small role. He's not a good Hawkman. Everything he says is corny as hell. It just doesn't come across as tough. When you put him next to Dwayne Johnson, that doesn't do anything for me. That won't do anything for a casual audience member either, because Hawkman fighting Black Adam is just not interesting. That doesn't work for me.
Well, I also think, like we were saying while watching this movie even, it seemed like this movie was supposed to be not only two different movies for two different Black Adam movies, but then it was supposed to lead into the JSA movie too.
I think so, yeah.
And then it's like, well, now none of them make any sense, and this whole movie is just kind of like crumpled away.
Right.
When they could have had two decent movies, maybe, with Black Adam just alone.
It's frustrating. This movie really is like the epitome of frustrating for me, and it just really hurts. And I think a lot of that, even too, maybe in a weird world, this could have worked, right? This could have maybe had functioned, and you could have had something here. But I think the problem really is the story is just weak. Right, the whole entire story is very weak, from Black Adam rising again and just coming back and fighting this terrorist organization that's taken over the city and everything. It's just not that interesting of a story, and they make a lot of odd decision making when trying to create tension. Because they have, like you said, during the middle of the movie, we thought the movie was over. There's a scene clearly where Black Adam's kind of done doing his thing and he's resigned himself of the situation and he's going to be stored away, and it's like, oh, all right, well that's the end. I'm like, this is kind of boring. I feel like it can't be over. And I looked at you and I'm like, there got to be more to this, right? This can't be it. Sure enough, there's still almost 40 minutes left of this movie when we get to that point, and I'm like, oh my god, are you kidding me? That's bad writing. When it felt like a very large climax, almost to like as if they had another movie, and we were segueing into the next movie. It felt like at that point. It was such it's a mismatch. This movie's Frankenstein together on very poor writing, I think.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I feel like the Black Adam character, just what I've seen everywhere from stuff, he just seems like such a great character. The fact that, again, but this happens with so many of these superheroes, that when they come to the big screen, they do them such a poor injustice.
Right.
That you're just like, wow, like they really screwed the pooch on that. Like there's so much stuff that's written down they could come up with. And when they come up with something like this, it just makes you, as like just a comic fan in general, just be like, really? That's what we're doing?
It's frustrating. And, DC, they do have some issues here, too, with the fact that, and I kept saying this when we were watching it, too, I'm like, Marvel kind of did this before. A lot of this movie. And it's not really DC's fault, but they need to do something to differentiate themselves from the pack. So when I say that, it's like the fish out of water storyline is almost like a Thor storyline where Thor is like introduced to the world and he has to fight. Oh, look at this. He doesn't understand things. It's a little silly. Or the whole Dr. Fate is pretty much Tony Stark and Doctor Strange put together. The scene where they show Dr. Fate's face, right? They show Pierce Brosnan's face in the helmet. I'm like, that's like the Iron Man scene where they show Tony Stark's head and he's going around looking around. Giant Man is like wannabe Ant-Man and Deadpool smashed together. Cyclone is Storm. Hawkman is kind of like another Iron Man-esque kind of character, like / Black Panther. It's been done before. That's the problem. It feels like I've seen it before because I have.
Well, also the thing is that every time you used to talk about Marvel and DC, you would say DC has got that darker edge to it.
Right.
They could do so much with that darker edge if they wanted to, but they're just giving us what they've already seen and going, well, I hope this makes as much money as that one does. Not coming up with something a little bit darker, a little bit more sinister, which will then bring people in and go, they'll not see it as much as, hey, look, it's another Ant-Man. They'll see it as that character instead of it's a little bit darker, and just go, oh, like we were just going through every character. Like, oh, yeah, there's the girl from X-Men, every single time.
Right, and it feels like that. And, I think if DC had committed more to making Black Adam the villain, and I think a lot of that maybe has to do with, Dwayne Johnson's involvement, probably not wanting to be the particular villain of the movie. He wanted to be kind of the hero with an edge a little bit. And maybe there is a world again where that works, but the fact is the story is less than fine. And what could have improved it? Simply just making the Black Adam the villain of the movie. In the Shazam story, that would have made the most sense because that's where he's from anyway. Instead of just ripping away a huge, potentially humongous, bigger than huge, ridiculously over-the-top villain, he's in a lackluster movie, and that's kind of where he's going to be. They just tried way too hard to make him a good guy when the character just screams strong antagonist. And if you look at every comic book movie that's come out, besides Thanos and Loki, you name me another villain that really stands out. I mean, the Joker, sure, but there really isn't. Green Goblin, that's not that many. With how many superhero films that the market is flooded with, I can barely name you many more villains that aren't just generic copies of other characters. And sure, Black Adam is kind of like a generic copy of Shazam. He's bad. He's the Man in Black, right? Shazam. He's not, though. He's such a deeper character, and there was such a cool story to be told here. If only they decide to, pull the trigger and make him that villain, I think we could have had a completely different movie here. But unfortunately, this is forgettable. It's more like a 2000s Daredevil / Elektra Punisher type movie where, it's a little corny and it has its fun moments, but I don't care if I ever watch it again. I'd be happy actually not to see it again, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's not one of those ones I want to go back to watching.
Yeah, and I think with all that being said, I think we're ready to give our final scores. I'm going to give Black Adam a 4 out of 10. I wanted to give it a better score, and a lot of me, as part of my DC roots, I had to kind of separate the two things. There's just not enough here. And like I said earlier in the review, for every good moment, I can name you 2, maybe even 3 bad moments to compile on top of that. There's nothing really original in here. Dwayne Johnson doing his thing as Black Adam, even Pierce Brosnan surprisingly showing up and giving us an amazing Dr. Fate. It can't save this movie. There's a reason the DC universe is in the hole that it's in now, and look no further than Black Adam, unfortunately. John, where do you stand with this film?
I gotta give this movie a 6.
Suppose they didn't have doors in your day.
Well, of course we did. That's how we entered rooms.
What I did there is called sarcasm.
I thought that the action, some of the great action saved it, and Pierce Brosnan, just his comedic timing, I thought was pretty good. But I also think that really the best part of this movie was at the end credits, when they showed that little preview that we're never going to get to see anymore.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. Yeah, and that was actually the best part. And again, it's one of those things, like, is it even worth talking about? Henry Cavill showed up as Superman at the end in the final tease here. We're never going to get that movie. It's officially already been announced that it's not happening. And that's the shame, because that's maybe the movie we should have gotten. Because, again, this movie, for me, and I'm surprised you're even higher than me, this was just not an enjoyable ride. And again, maybe we'll see Black Adam again sometime in this universe, depending on what happens with the Shazam films. But as of right now, again, I'm not looking forward to it.
Well, yeah, the other problem is, even if we see another Black Adam, we're going to still compare that Black Adam to The Rock.
Right.
And I felt The Rock played a Black Adam good.
I think so. And I think there is a chance for him to come back and do this character again with better writers, a stronger team, stronger story overall. I mean, James Gunn's in charge. We'll have to see what happens. But anyway, thank you guys all so much for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That guy over there, he's John. We are your Real Movie Guys. We'll catch you next time.
See ya!
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.